What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Sorry about the apologies there, a little bit of delay, but we got everything all figured out. And welcome in to our latest Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Cannabis caught a bid here earlier today. Interesting is there is a story reported about someone actually meeting with the Trump administration about federal legalization. And I know that probably got a lot of people's attention, but let's just calm everything and not get ahead of ourselves. But it was nice to see the industry catch a bid. Coming up, we're going to have Margaret Brodie, CEO of Rubicon, who had some interesting news this week about a new facility that they purchased in BC and how they're doubling down on the Canadian market as well. A lot of you've reached out. Seth Yakatan is going to come in. We'll talk about the latest earnings season and some interesting news regarding GLASSF, which they announced on Monday at a very, very good rate, 8.58%, and what this means for the company moving forward. With that, let's welcome in AV here on a Wednesday. Good to see you.
How's it going?
I am good. So we got a little bit of a bid here today. I didn't get a chance to see, but how did it close?
Closed Verano was up 26, TerraSend was up 22, MSOX was up 21, Jushi's up 17, Safe Harbor's up 15, Cresco's up 12, and MSOS was up 10.5 on the day. So it was a pretty good day.
But what do you think was the result of that? Was it the story that was posted? I know Tom over at Marijuana, he outlined that there was a White House staffer who was invited to a long-term activist to submit a memo making the case for why President Trump should back federal legalization. Do you think that was it? As to why we got what we got today?
I think the sector is desperately oversold. I mean, names got kicked in the teeth yesterday. TerraSend was trading, and I bought TerraSend yesterday. TerraSend was trading at about the value of their real estate plus a little bit of their cash.
That's wild.
It's just yesterday was completely, I think, overdone. Today, it's nice to get the headline from Marijuana Moment. I want to just give everybody a little bit of a cautious note. This is another like imminent. It doesn't mean anything. There is absolutely nothing material in this story. This is a staffer saying that they are willing to look at a proposal on what federal legalization looks like. To me, means absolutely nothing. It's not high impact. Nothing's changed. Action's great in the tape. I'll take it. I'm sure everybody's happy to see some volume and see some price action to the upside. We've had a lot of red days over the past couple of weeks, but for me, this means absolutely nothing.
That is wild when you put it the way you just did about TerraSend and what they're trading at as far as value. Crazy.
Yeah, but they retraced the entire move. They retraced the entire move from them pre-announcing earnings. Actually went below it. They tapped 40 cents yesterday, US. Verano too. I mean, Verano is way, way oversold.
Yeah.
And so is the entire sector.
John Hammond, I hear you. Better than nothing. Brian Cook, good to see you again here today. While everybody's been freaking out the last couple of weeks, I've been sleeping like a baby. Well, at least somebody is in this industry, but always good to hear from you, Brian. That's for sure. All right. We got a packed show here today. We got a couple of great guests on. And with that, let's welcome in our first guest. She is the CEO of Rubicon Organics. First time to the podcast, Margaret Brodie. Good to see you. And great to finally have you on the podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for the welcome. And I think I would like to say that there are some people that are sleeping pretty well, but I have to say I'm up early and excited to get to work these days because I think Canada's at a tipping point and there's lots to talk about.
Yeah, I know. And I was saying that off the top, and I actually put it in our title about how we're going to probably see some interesting changes within the Canadian market. And I know we'll get into that, including some of the strategies that some of the Canadian LPs went international, and will there be implications pertaining to that moving forward? And there's some great insight that you provided us offline before actually we were on with this live stream. But I first wanted to begin with the news earlier this week regarding the purchase agreement with Medipharm, along with the facility that you basically bought, which is 47,000 square foot facility, correct? And absolutely. I think what's important is how cost effective that you got this facility, and more importantly too, like I said, you're doubling down on the Canadian cannabis market, expanding your footprint. So talk to us about this purchase agreement and what it does for the company in the short-term future.
Absolutely. Well, for those who don't know, who is Rubicon Organics? We are Canada's leading and #1 premium house of brands. We've got premium market share over 6%. We've got 3 flagship brands: Simply Bare Organic, we're certified organic, 1964 Supply, and Wildflower. We're based here in Delta, BC, and listed on the TSXV and OTCQX. But we're the world's leading scaled premium and organic cannabis company, and we have really unique IP on that. Why does organic matter? Living soil, expression of terpenes, a connoisseur consumer, and I think we've got a few on the phone that understand the effect and impact of a truly beautiful genetic, which expresses all the terpenes. We live for that. We want to bring that to the world, and that's where we started. We're starting to get recognition in Canada of that. The last 2 years, Brightfield's done third-party surveys. Rubicon has our two brands, flower first brands, have been in the top 5 of most recommended products across all categories, even the cheap stuff, by bud tenders. And bud tenders matter. We also just swept, to quite a surprise, the sort of Oscars of Canadian cannabis, as I call them, in December, the Kind Awards. These are voted on by bud tenders. It's not, we didn't pay to play. And we won Brand of the Year with 1964, Flower of the Year, Vape of the Year, Hash of the Year, Edible of the Year, Topical of the Year, Best New Product of the Year. And our vapes, we launched in May. So the power of the branding that we've been able to do and the trust with consumer is really tremendous. Vape is a massive growing category in Canada. It's only about 16, 17% of the market. In the US, it's around 30. We think there's a lot of room to grow. And also Quebec is going to come online. It has not, it's the second largest market in Canada. It hasn't had any vape yet. And we're seeing, the power of brand just starting to emerge. So we're really excited. Why did we buy this facility? Now, the deal's not done yet. You always, you gotta hold the tension until it is. But for 4.5 million Canadian dollars, and I know the discount jokes that we're going to get from the US on the play money that it is, but it's a steal for the price. We couldn't build it anywhere near that. This was the first licensed producer, or the first licensed facility in British Columbia, which is, the home of BC Weed. Very proud to own that sort of asset of lore. It's going to increase our capacity by almost 50%. We're going to have annual production capacity of around 15.5 kilos of premium weed. You can go to a field and grow weed, but that's not the same as premium, beautiful weed. And we can turn this thing on fast. We expect to get our first harvest out of it this year. And it's close to our existing facility, about an hour and a half. So it's a step change for us. We're excited. Our team's excited, and we're ready to go. Yeah.
It's great.
We've seen a lot of positive data points out of the Canadian market as of recent. How is the consumer resonating as it relates to premium? Is it more of are your consumers not price sensitive? They know your brands. They have an affinity for your brands. They have an affinity for your product, and they stick. What are you seeing as far as trends in data in regards to the consumer that's buying premium?
Sorry to cut you off. Anybody in alcohol or cannabis would tell you that the inflation over the last few years has been challenging for everybody.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a consumer who walks in and says, "I want the highest THC for the lowest price." That's not our consumer. You know who our consumer is? They want to take their hard-earned dollars. They want to walk into store. They want to trust the product that they buy, and every time have that trust and great brand experience. And that's something that we bring. Quality is one of our values. Everything we put out, we make decisions on quality. We're going to go and we're going to make a decision to put the best product quality we can put out there. Then we're going to start looking at the price, the costing after that. And that's what you're going to hear from us in going forward. But we want to win with market share and have consumers trust what we do. We've seen in the early days of Canadian cannabis, people charging an arm and a leg, opening up that package, looking in and seeing crap. And I think everybody who buys cannabis has had that experience in a legal market. We never want that to happen. And we really believe that our customer and the consumer is absolutely critical to that experience. Someone's worked a long day. Let them have let them open it up and know that it's good. And I think that's where the brand promise is just really starting to work now.
Margaret, do you find that cannabis consumers, I questioned, do you think that they want more quality? Say, when you look at alcohol consumers, is quality mean a lot more in the cannabis side versus alcohol?
I think it means more because you just trust what you're paying for, and the brands are so well established in alcohol, right? Yeah. You don't see a legacy market in alcohol. You don't see people putting out product that they can't trust in alcohol. Really, that's very rare. In weed, that trust is not there, and it's not consistent. So, we see some really interesting things that have happened. We were the first company to come up with live rosin edibles, which is a brand new experience to a lot of the legal market. And when we created that, I like to think about distillate as being all the leaves in your garden in the fall. You pull them all together. You know, it's stuff that nobody's using. You squish it through a machine. It's kind of like the Everclear. Distillate's like the Everclear. You maybe throw some flavoring in it, and you're going to get an experience. Yeah, you'll get high, but it's not the same thing as when you take a beautiful terpene-rich plant.
Yeah.
You squish it. You know, you squish it through. You take the care. You get that full expression of the genetic, full expression of the plant. That's what we stand for. We've done that with edibles. We've now done it with vape. And I think once the consumer experiences it, in particular with cannabis, the price point in some of those, it's very low relative to the cost of alcohol. So once you go there,
Yeah.
you don't tend to go back. And so we're seeing that category grow. Yeah, we're always going to have pricing pressure on inflation and economy. That's true of any business. But I think a lot of people that love weed are going to go back to things they trust, and they're going to want new experiences. And what we've found is people tend to have their everyday staples, but a cannabis consumer loves new news. You know, how many times have you walked in and wanted to try that new genetic, right? So it's something we take really seriously at Rubicon. We think it's a big part of premium, and it's going to be, I think in about 3 years, the world's going to realize, I think the connoisseur understands the importance of genetics, but there's a whole story yet to come on that in the next few years.
Yeah, well,
for those that don't know, why organic? How does organic influence the end product, especially as it relates to flower, to create that premium experience end product?
Great question. So the most colloquial way to think about it is you go into the grocery store in December, and maybe not in Florida, Anthony, but definitely here in British Columbia and in Canada and the northern parts of the US, and you buy a case of strawberries, and the first one you have, it's been reddened on the truck on the way there. It might be yellow when you bite into it. It has kind of a nothing flavor of water.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go into your garden and all of a sudden there's something that's grown up on a little strawberry plant and you eat it, it's a sweeter, more rich, full experience. That's the difference that we're talking about. What the plant does in an organic environment is it has to work to get the bioavailability out of the soil. So actually the plant works harder, and in the plant working harder, and I'm oversimplifying, I'm sure a lot of people in our team would kick me for this, but when the plant works harder, it actually creates more stress and it puts more flower out there. Because what we're doing with the flower is we're saying, hey, you know, I'm stressed, come get me. So we do want to stress the plants in the end. When they have to work hard for that through the soil, it actually develops more terpenes, more flavors, and a better expression. So, yeah.
What can you tell me about this facility? Obviously, it caught your eye, but why is that?
Well, firstly, the price.
Yeah, it's very attractive. Very attractive price.
Who doesn't like a deal? Who doesn't like a deal? It's operational ready. So we have in Canada today a supply shortage. It has happened fast. Being able to turn on incremental supply really quickly versus building of a facility. This facility is proven. It has delivered premium product in the past. You know, Medipharm has switched their strategy. They're going a different direction. We are thrilled to be able to come in and purchase it from them. I think it solves their problem, but for us, it is creating opportunity. Look, it is immediately incremental to us in 26. So I have to remember what year it was there. And it's, you know, I think it just adds to the bottom line really quickly. The ROI, I'm still crunching the numbers on the ROI. So and I like to be credible on what I say, but it is very quick. It's less than 18 months. I'll get a better number than that, but I'll hedge my bets for now. That's incredible ROI. It also allows us, when we're in a position where we're effectively sold out in Canada and using, and we've got wonderful contract partners that we work with. We want to continue those relationships. This is in addition to that, and we want to grow our business. We see the consumer is starting to move towards understanding brand and quality, and we need to control supply in order to be able to keep that commitment. We're also seeing incredible inbound demand from the international markets. So we don't want to short our Canadian customers in order to do that.
Yeah.
We think our Canadian customers are incredibly important, and brands are being built today, right now. The halo of having brand in Canada and your pricing ability internationally is real. And so we're testing and learning with international this year. I like to say we date before we marry. You talk to anybody at Rubicon, you'll hear those words a lot, whether it's testing equipment, you know, how things are going, working with partners. We do like to test. We're doing that with international. There's big opportunity, and we want to show what we can do in terms of the wonderful supply we'll be able to get out of that facility and take it into the world.
It's great.
Does this facility and the expansion to, I guess, increasing your capacity by, let's say, 50%, does that allow you to now control your supply chain more and really dial in that and allow you to control more from a QA QC perspective?
100%. And it also, look, we've got fantastic genetics. We'll be ready to go right away. Will allow us to do some more exciting work at that site. It will allow us to grow really beautiful premium indoor, which in particular the international markets actually really demand. So
Okay.
I think that we're going to have a Canadian store, a Canadian focus with opportunity to show what true premium is to the world. We see a bias internationally to, and I think I mentioned it to your team the other day, a large nug, kind of like getting it to be as large as possible and focused on yield, and that's what the international consumer in a lot of ways is looking for, and they perceive that to be premium. But premium, it doesn't talk to smokability, to quality, to flavor, to experience. The Canadian consumer, because they've been in this market for a long, for 8 years now, it's moved along, and they're very critical. I mean, if we have a drop that doesn't hit, I hear about it, and we have friends at stores that call and say, Margaret, that one didn't hit, or you could have sold this for a lot more money. I had a fun story with a famous legacy guy saying, I bought a whole case of that. That was amazing flower, and it was last year's White Rainbow, and it's still an incredible flower.
Okay.
But look, we think that consumer will get there internationally. For now, it's going to be about consistency for the patient, and what we can do with indoor and controlling in small rooms is really bring that consistent experience, because these are medical patients we're talking about,
right?
And it's a different environment than the rec market.
So you talk about controlling your own supply being extremely important. We've learned the hard way in this industry. In the early days, it was all about size and scale.
Yeah.
How is it all arranged amongst other companies? Like, what kind of supply agreements do they have? And yet, as you said, controlling your own supply is extremely important. What's going on in the industry as a whole as to, like, is that being done enough? And if so, why isn't it?
Well, I think the word freneticism is probably appropriate to use with what's happening in Canadian cannabis today. I don't think investors are seeing it yet. We've seen a dramatic increase in wholesale price over the last number of months. We've seen a firing up of facilities. We do expect that to happen. It takes a while. Large facilities were tried to be turned on and were unsuccessful. It's not that easy to grow weed on scale because of the humidity, the pressure. We haven't had years and years of agriculture experience. We don't plant from seed generally. It's cloning, all those types of things that cannabis has not been the beneficiary of. When you just throw people and money at things, you can just waste a lot of people resources and a lot of money.
Yeah.
So right now, what we've seen is the all of a sudden the world is turning on. Exports are being demanded. People are coming in looking for supply, and there is nowhere to turn. And it's going to take time to turn on those other countries. Look how long it's taken Canada to get where it is. It's been 8 years of legalization, and we're, so if you're Australia, you're turning on, they're going to do a great job, but it's going to take them a minute to get there. Germany, the cost of electricity is incredibly high.
Yes.
These markets in Europe are turning on. Where are they going to get the supply from? Firstly, it has to be medical grade. So where are you going to get medical product from? It's going to come from a regulated market where, Health Canada, for all my frustrations with them, they're allowing us to tap into that market because of the rules that we have to follow. We've got a nationalized rule system that is heavily audited, and so it will allow the trust to the consumer for the medical patient in those markets. So we've got people coming in saying, well, I can pay another $1 on top of what you're getting in Canada, but the Canadian consumer, because we had oversupply, price went down and down and down, and that was hard. I mean, we've had 3 years of real competition and pain. So companies that have made it through that and are now on the other side, really, and can control their supply are on the beneficiary. But what's happening with some companies is a lot of them went to a full contract manufacturing and contract grow model. They don't own their supply.
Right.
You don't own your supply right now, and you're a contract manufacturer, and you can sell your product for a higher price to someone else. What are you going to do after 3 years of famine? You're going to do what you do. So here's the benefit to a company like ours. A, we can control our supply. We have partners we work with as well that are wonderful partners. But B, if you're a premium company and you're trying to sell weed, your wholesale price has gone up. You're going to either have to raise your price or you're going to have to start losing money. So it's going to really change the game. And I think, there's companies out there, and I won't name names because it's just not my jam. But they're going to be stretched. But in moments like this is where the market can develop innovation. And I have certainly learned you do not count anybody in this industry out. But you have to hold the line on quality and trust with your consumer and your customer. So at the same time,
do it yourself, right? Do it yourself. And that's
all this dynamic is we've got customers in Canada, and our first customer is the province. So there are 5 customers that you have to deal with when you're selling to a Canadian. Let's say say I'm walking down the street and I'm smoking a joint. How does it get to me? Firstly, we sell to the provincial distributor.
Okay.
The provincial distributor then sells to the retailer. So we have to get on the list, like the liquor lists we have to get on the cannabis list from the province. They don't accept everything. They only have a few product calls a year where you're allowed to pitch to them what they want you to sell, what they're looking to sell.
So how do they evaluate, I guess, that whole process?
Rate of sale,
customer sell through.
Basically like Walmart and Costco do. At first they listed everything, but a lot of people in our industry just grew what they like and didn't think about what the consumer would purchase.
Right.
And this is about, we're here to have people that love weed get great weed and get what they like.
Yes.
Not necessarily what I like. My taste isn't everybody's. So we do a lot of work. Our marketing and commercial teams do a lot of work on understanding what people are looking for and where it's going and where the trend's going. And from there, you've got to satisfy and work with, deliver on time in full to the distributor. You get scored on that. Your listings reflect the customer scoring to every province. So it's massive. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, the Ontario Cannabis Store, which is the provincial distributor, was saying that I think it was something like 40% of deliveries were either missed or late, which, think about if you're running a distribution warehouse, 40% of the time people don't show up. You can't run a business like that.
Your contract's done.
Exactly. But, this is a new industry, so I think there's a bit more,
I get it.
More wiggle room. But then after you get there, then the retailer has to buy it. They spend money out of pocket and they buy it. What if it doesn't sell? What if they can't sell it? What if you don't provide them with sell sheets? You explain the product, you educate people. Then they're going to return it to the province that has 18 months to return it to the LP. So the retailer has it, but the retailer isn't selling. It's actually the bud tender, the person at the front. Everything's over the counter. The bud tender selling. So you need the bud tender to understand your story. And then what we have, the shopper that comes in. Because in cannabis, it's one of the things very different than other things where people buy for a lot of other people. A lot of people don't go to the store. I buy for lots of friends who don't love going to stores. It's getting very expensive.
Yeah.
So their experience is 5 different things: the province, the retailer, the bud tender, the shopper, and then the consumer.
Interesting.
So you're thinking about everybody in that chain.
You said that you find going into stores is getting more expensive. Is that right?
No, sorry.
I misunderstood that.
Yeah, no, sorry. I think that the grocery store is getting more expensive, but I don't think the cannabis store is. I think we might see some pricing action this year. Big Bag of Buds from Organigram and Pure Sun Farms, I believe, both of them have taken price, so increased their prices. I don't know if in premium we'll see that happen. I think TBD, and I certainly wouldn't lead if we were going to or not going to, because it's competitive. But look, this is about being on shelf, and when a whole bunch of your competitors are leaving the marketplace and coming off shelf and no longer investing in the sales and marketing teams and what you need to have in terms of boots on the ground in Canada, that shelf space is up for grabs. And if the list from the province is getting tighter, which it is, they're all trying to tighten the list, and you're on shelf today, you want to keep that shelf space and build your brand really hard.
As far as scaling goes, I'm assuming the organic nature of the way that you're growing, it's a more, I don't want to say labor intensive, but it's a more nurtured experience as to your growing and your cultivation practices. Does the fact that you're organic mean that you have to scale in a more tactical manner and, let's say, like a step function process versus going into like 1 million square feet if the demand is there for the product? Yes
and no. I believe at this stage, Delta and our existing facility will be the home of Simply Bare Organic, and I hope for 30 years.
Okay.
Could I see Rubicon growing our other brands that are less focused on organic, or our vape product can't be organic in the way it goes through butane. So, I think that we'll be growing in the first instance, at least until we do an assessment, not organically at the new facility, which provides opportunity for us to push premium indoor, and I think that's fantastic. TBD on the future. I have a vision for 20 to 30,000 kilos of premium production in BC. But it's all about being premium. You can go and turn on a facility and grow lots of weed. That's actually not that hard. But growing premium weed is organically in a hybrid facility with rainbow crops. So what we do is actually, we don't do one room that's all Blue Dream or one room that's all Lemon Loops. It's everything's changing and everything's got different growth in it. And that's from a commercial perspective. If we ever had crop loss, we'd still be able to satisfy our customers. So we never want to be in a position that we're behind the 8 ball like that. We're very commercially minded. There are moments where our cultivation team comes to us and says, "Oh, do I have to grow this genetic? It's tough." But the little aphid loves it. Well, then we have to release the little ladybug, and the ladybug comes in, or the nematode, or whatever it is, nematode. I can't forget all the names. I'll get in trouble. Comes in and eats that little thing because it's a biological system. It's kind of like walking into those ecodomes, right? You know those ecodomes. It's pretty fun. It's a living, breathing machine, and we are really sort of high tech farmers, but with beautiful weed and dirt. Our facility it's got little bunnies that hop around outside. So I mean, I think we're those cheesy Canadian people that love weed that want to do it right. But in saying all of that, we want to win.
Yeah, it's the best way to do it. I grow a bunch of plants, not cannabis plants, but plants in my backyard. And I got one day, this package came with about 3,000 ladybugs in it. And my wife thought I was crazy. And I was like, there's bugs. I don't want to spray chemicals. These guys will do exactly what we need. A month later, no bugs.
And you know what? They're not more expensive than the chemicals.
They're cheaper.
Yeah.
Margaret,
I'd rather be doing it the organic way.
Margaret, do you believe, Anthony, that there was just plants and not cannabis plants?
No.
We had home grow. If we had home grow, I'd be growing right now in my house. Trust me.
Oh yeah, of course.
Unfortunately, we don't. Unfortunately, we don't have it.
We were in your area. We were actually in Delta, BC last September with the Village Farms people. But that is an ideal area to grow cannabis, is it not?
It is the best place in Canada, in our view, to grow cannabis. Look, we've got access to workforce. We're in a beautiful little sun pocket. We're about 2 kilometers, I think, by the way the crow flies, to the Pure Sun Farms facility. They're a great team. And it's a great place to grow, and there's culture around it. So what people don't realize is the draft dodgers from the US that were frustrated with the Vietnam War and smoking weed came and settled up in Canada. And that created the early communities in BC. Now, obviously, a whole bunch of Canadians joined in because who doesn't love a party? And that's what created the original BC weed and BC culture, whether it was Nelson on the Sunshine Coast here. And I'm really proud of that history. I think it's really cool. I think especially in times like this, it's very important to remember the friendship and all the things in the world that are kind of cool. And I've always loved that story.
Yeah, it's great.
By far my favorite part of Canada. I got to go from Vancouver to drive up to the Okanagan, and it is an absolutely gorgeous drive.
Yeah,
all the way
and actually this new facility is about an hour outside the city. Before you get into the mountains, it's right at the bridge of the mountains and the beautiful river. It's beside a river, the big Fraser River. There's mountains on either side, and I gotta say, I mean, we've got the culture and access to the labor force, and it's something that a lot of people don't realize. When you build a huge facility in the middle of nowhere and there's no labor, you can't run it. So you also, I believe, want to be managing facilities near where your leadership team is in an industry like this, because it's moving so fast. You want to see. I do a crop walk every week. I go in the facility, I look around, I'm making sure the plants are in great shape, talking to the team, understanding what's happening, whether it's safety, and I have to admit that a lot of the time it's a good amount of fun to go in and smell the terpenes and look at the product. That's kind of the highlight of my day. And you get in there midwinter when it's raining outside, and it's like walking into Hawaii. It's fabulous.
That's amazing. I see a lot of passion in you as running this company, and you can't argue, obviously, what you're producing. And what I'm learning here, and especially with a lot of comments, is that especially Canadian consumers, they love quality. And leave some comments if you think that Anthony and I should go back out to BC. I think it's a facility, excuse me, that we need to check out. But love that area, knowing it's pretty much Anthony's second home when he goes out there. I'm the Canadian, and he's basically showing me around to go out there. Then where the places you need to go, the restaurants you need to check out.
BC weed, you got to try BC weed. Like, I got to tell you that we are focused on making sure that every person, as long as they are allowed, are here in Canada, can try our products. We've got some fabulous products. I'm really excited about the new drops. We're very proud of what we do, and I think there's a lot of room to grow in all of the categories that we're looking at. I think we're going to have a tremendous couple of years ahead of us in Canada, and I couldn't be more excited. The energy after the last few years of getting through the real slog.
Yeah.
Now it's, I'm getting up really early, and I'm going, no, you have to stay in bed another half hour. You can't go to work yet.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
That's pretty crazy, right?
Irish writes, what does she think will be the odds of the budget change? I assume that's related to the excise.
Excise reform. Look, excise reform was on the table. I understand last fall at the Feds. I sit on the Cannabis Council of Canada. I think Carney will understand so there's a dynamic happening in Canada between the Liberals and the Conservatives. All of a sudden, it's a neck and neck race, which it wasn't even 5 weeks ago. I think the Conservatives will look to red tape reduction and combating the illicit market. That will be what they sit on. And I think the Liberals will understand that this is a GDP opportunity for Canada that isn't going to our largest customer, which is the United States. So we should be investing in this industry. It is a global competitive advantage for Canada. We could have head offices that are leading around the world if we invest in this industry, and I think we'd be fools not to, whether it's the medical efficacy, whether it's the cultivation knowledge, innovation. We've got it happening. We've got an advantage. I'd be very disappointed in Mr. Trudeau if his legacy of legalizing cannabis was to leave the industry where it is. And I can tell you I'm putting the full court press on that.
That's great.
What the question was, what do I think the chances are? I think it will happen. I couldn't tell you when.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if anything, who knows how long these tariffs will stick around. But I think of one thing, it's for sure. It's woken up, I think, lawmakers from both sides of the border right now and how they view things. And, if you're in Canada right now, especially with an aging country, you can't leave any stone unturned right now and look at some business opportunities. But yeah, federal legalization was announced back, what was it, 2018 in Canada?
Well, it was announced in 2016 or 2015, and it went legal in 2018. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, hope to get it out of the facility. 4.5 million Canadian. I'd be curious if you built that today, what that would cost.
Oh, over 10 million.
Wow.
Yeah, easy.
So now I understand why you're saying got at a cost-effective price. But listen, love the interview, love the feedback. Got a lot of great positive feedback from a lot of our viewers here today about the quality that you're producing. So tell your team we say hello. Keep up the great work. This is a really good story in the cannabis space, and let's please keep in touch, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Margaret. Appreciate your time. What a great story. That's a nice story right there. And I know you were nodding your head when I asked the question, do you think cannabis consumers like quality more so than alcohol consumers? And I could tell that you were saying undoubtedly yes. But
I mean, they do, but it's expensive. I mean, I pay, people think I'm crazy because I pay $60 an eighth for flower in the regulated market in Florida, which is expensive.
Yeah.
It's not cheap by any means. I can easily go buy a $20 eighth from the same dispensary. I choose to buy the quality because I enjoy quality. If we had organic offerings, which I think the only MMTC in Florida that does or that has organic offerings is Green Dragon. But no, if I had access to Rubicon in Florida, I'd probably be buying their product. I'm pretty sure we actually did buy some of their product last time when we were at the Village Farms facility months back. Yeah.
Salt Coast Fishing writes, I'm with you with quality over quantity. That's for sure. Fred G, another awesome woman in the industry. Well said, my friend.
Yeah. She's a great CEO.
All right. All right. Arns, let's bring up the PSIL ad that we promote during this time. We are going to still talk about cannabis. Let's bring that up right now. And let's welcome in segment number 2 on today's podcast. He is an investor and advisor here in the cannabis space. Seth Yakatan. Good to see you, sir. Welcome back to the podcast. How are things?
I am excellent. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You've been traveling a lot from what I hear. Yes, where were you?
Occupational hazard. I actually just got back from the Benzinga cannabis meeting in New Jersey.
How was that?
It was robust. Jersey is $1 billion market. I've watched that market grow up over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I was actually in Canada for a couple days in New York a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I get on the move here. First quarter into the second quarter, and then third quarter into the fourth quarter. You could do a cannabis meeting a week, and you guys know I have this minuscule LinkedIn presence, and so I get asked to speak at a lot of meetings, and got Hall of Flowers coming up in California in 2 weeks, and a couple of beverage meetings after that. So nothing like being on the road and meeting people, and that's how I think that's really how you get a pulse on markets and sentiment. So
like we've heard some stories out of New Jersey. Is it oversaturated right now? I know the level of competition, the amount of people have gone online. It's become a crowded state, to say the least. But what was the takeaway, or like some of the questions that was important that was discussed there?
I think you've seen now from an empirical basis in 14 to 18 markets in the United States that you have this price compression effect.
Yeah.
And I think people are worried about that in New Jersey. Missouri, Illinois, Ohio, these states that seem to be more MSO centric and regulated in a way where they're kind of pseudo limited license or MSO favorable, I think have done better. Jersey seems to function that way just because of the way that the local legal process works at the county and the aldermen and the selectmen. So you've almost kind of had a de facto limited license set there. I think Jersey's probably going to be good for another year or 18 months or 2 years, but smaller operators, mom and pops, people that have single stores, unfortunately in our industry, it's not just the big people, right, that we talk all about. So they're a little bit concerned, but still a lot of optimism in that state, and a great culture. Jersey also kind of functions like 3 separate states. You have North Jersey, you have the Central Jersey, and you have South Jersey.
Okay.
One other thing is that when we talk about Missouri, the western border of Missouri borders 3 or 4 states that are never going to permit cannabis. So you almost have a geographic monopoly. When you look at Jersey and its geographic situation, it really borders Delaware to the south, where I think there's 13 stores and that's it. Pennsylvania to the west, where you have adult use and just as a de facto basis, lower quality and higher priced product.
Mm-hmm.
You have New York. You guys know what I think about New York. Connecticut, which is even worse than New York. So New Jersey also seems to be in this geographic, tri-state mix where it has the capability to sustain when other states might. But it was a lot of fun being there, and thanks to my conference partner Benzinga, best conference in the business, and love it. Just love being there.
They put on some great events, don't they?
They really do. Elliot and Patrick Lane, can't thank them enough for the platform and the relationship, and just sitting there with a bunch of decision makers in a hotel and just having a coffee is what is what my stock and trade is. So really appreciate it. Really appreciate being back on with you gentlemen. I know it's been a little bit of a hiatus, getting me at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday to commit.
I know.
But I'm sorry, but I'm so happy to be here.
No,
so thank you for the opportunity.
Well, look, I don't want to recap everything, but I think there's some telling signs over the last 7 days when you factor in GTI, Trulieve, Verano, and Curaleaf, who are the latest big MSOs to report. GTI, what can you say? As you said last week, Anthony, on Twitter, they're just built different. But when you look at this, what they do, is it $294 million for the quarter, $1.1 billion for the year, $43 million share buyback. And you're really starting to see that this company does not care about any kind of reform, rescheduling whatsoever. How do you think this company looks in the next couple of years, knowing how much they're thriving now, regardless if reform takes place, in comparison to the rest of the space? Like, do they completely separate themselves? They already have in a lot of ways.
Look, I think when I've been highly critical of Ben Kovler publicly in some of my announcements in the last 2 quarters. I think he's illustrated to me that he might be the smartest poker player of all of them. He's fundamentally built a business, right? And when we look at GTI as a vertically integrated oil company or consumer products company or whatever, he's built a functioning business. He's not relying on catalysts, right? So I think I was conditioned as a credit investor and as a Graham Buffett type of investor, it's a value play, right? So he's very careful with what he does. He moderately under promises and moderately over delivers, and he consistently delivers results. The Senorita Agrify deal is very interesting. I read a piece which I will share with you when we're offline about how that might turn into a tracking stock where he could potentially jettison all of his brands into that company and then license them back to the company. And so there's a lot of really interesting kind of things that he could do there. But I just think, that's nice. You said he's built differently. I do think it's built differently. I think it's built in a way, maybe very, via serendipity, where he's not relying on something to happen and he's not relying on a bigger outcome. But I do believe that over the last 3 quarters, when I look at the big three, which I'm going to say GTI, Trulieve, and Curaleaf, he separated himself from a performance perspective from the pack.
Yeah.
How would you grade his peers that reported as well with Curaleaf and Trulieve?
So I've also been critical of Kim. I won't feed into speculation, but there was a management announcement there in the last 10 days, which I'm scratching my head about. Some of the more sophisticated investors that I talk to think that's a signal of something, which we could speculate on or not, but we'll see. It's okay. I think she did well, right? I think she had great margins. She had positive, results. She beat her number. She beat her. I think she delivered 301.1, and her FactSet consensus was 292.5. So for her, I think that was a great outcome. Margin was good. Adjusted EBITDA was good. She had $300 million of cash on the balance sheet. She guided that margins were going to be at the 60% level, on a gross margin basis. I think she believes she has, the ability to outperform. I'm not going to ever talk about politics in the United States again for fear of being locked up. So I'm just going to say I don't know what's going to happen in Pennsylvania, but if she gets a bump in AU in Pennsylvania, it's only going to go up. Yeah. So I think for her, for Trulieve, after a tough quarter and really taking it in the shorts as a result of the election, that was a banger announcement for them, and I think she really knocked it out of the park. Yeah. I know many of the people very well on their wholesale and product side. They have a great team of really dedicated people there that I like and who get it internally. So I think they're also amongst best in class for me. Yeah. So. And if they get a nod of a bump and a little bit of a tweak in PA, I think they're going to do well. So I'll just wait and see there.
Yeah. Well, you brought up, look, Kim's going to be the boss, and I see that. But if you are bringing in a president, I assume that he's going to probably play the role of operations. But question for both of you, if there are any kind of tweaks within the company, Anthony, do you see her focusing more on the reform side, advocating in Washington? How do you see it, or do you think
I think it's indicative of you bringing a president when you want to relinquish some of the operational control from the CEO, and she becomes more of a figurehead. I mean, Kim's gonna run the roost. I think Kim might be I'm just speaking anecdotally here. This isn't on anything that conversationally that I've had with her or anyone from Trulieve, but I think that she's going to focus on policy. I think she's going to focus on large initiatives within the company. And the president is going to take over more of let's say a COO operational role. Could be wrong, but reading the tea leaves, that's kind of how I would read it.
Yeah. Well, looking at his background, he's been doing that for quite some time. So
I could expect. I mean, look, I want to invoke, for your people, this is not investment advice. This is pure speculation. You guys might think I'm decent at reading tea leaves. She's been the CEO for 10 years. Mm-hmm. I publicly stated that after the AU failure and how much money she spent in Florida, that if I was an activist investor, I would have wanted her fired. And so if you bring in, it's just a bad use of capital, right? So if $90 million, great. $300 million, no. So if you bring in an original founder who's been on the bench for a while, is she tired? Does she want to go upstairs? Does she want to keep fighting the fight? Remember, this is not an easy industry, guys.
It's not.
I just got off of 10 minutes of Muay Thai sparring. My knuckles are bloody, right? So, you know, I mean, maybe if there's ever going to be a signal to market that there might be a change, again, not one, not two, three really intelligent investors that I know on the buy side, and I had conversations privately this week talking about this exact point, and there's an overwhelming sentiment that maybe something is going to happen there as a result.
I don't want anybody to run with this, but what if she winds up in Washington as a cannabis czar, or
God
some sort
bless
of
her.
position in, or
God
some sort of
bless
position,
her.
some sort of position in Washington?
No one I would rather have in that position, in that industry, than her. I will tell you that as much grief as I've given her publicly, I will also tell you that I think she's one of the shrewdest operators in the industry.
Absolutely.
And probably one of the most shrewd political operators in the industry. She dominates Florida. And, you know, I could tell you stories about how quickly that company has responded to regulatory change in that state, so much that maybe there was something that they knew that other people didn't know. So, you know, she's a killer. And that's what you need in this business. You need killers.
Absolutely.
And I would love to have her in Washington for us. So, Kim, if that's where you're going to go, you got my vote. All right. I'll give you some lobbying dollars. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
One thing's for sure. We got some great YouTube shorts to cut up after that little piece right there. That was good. Look, she's done well in Florida. And I know another company that's positioned in Florida is Verano. They faced a net loss of $273 million in Q4. Revenue declined to $218 million, which did not meet estimates. How are you looking at this company? There's some growing concerns, to say the least. But if you were, I guess, part of management with this company, like, what is the first couple of things that you would address that you think that you would need to get changed?
So look, I will go on record as telling you that I really like Verano. Okay. I have very strong personal relationships with many of the senior wholesale, retail, product buying, cultivation teams there. I think they're doing a really good job on the product side. When I look at what they're doing, right, excuse me, they had a miss on top line, and they had, you know, about a 6.2% retail sales decline and a 16.5% wholesale sales decline. They are struggling with price compression in key markets like Illinois, New York, and New Jersey. I think if they toggle the CapEx down, and I think they announced recently that they're going to have a new treatment of their 280E, I think it could significantly increase free cash flow generation in 2025. There's a wide belief, you know, their credit facility matures in October 26. I think they're going to pay down about 50 million of that this year and look to refi by the third or fourth quarter. And I think they're going to be just fine. Of the big, you know, 7 or 8 teams on the weed and the culture and the product side, their team gets it. And I really like them. So I believe in what they're doing. They've been impressing me with product. They got a couple guys in the pocket there, a couple men and women in the pocket there who really know what they're doing from that perspective. So I think if they just, you know, kind of toggle the dials a little bit, they're going to be just fine.
All right.
So what did you think of the, I mean, this is a little close to home, but I mean, it was an impressive announcement with the capital, the Kyle and Graham landed this week.
What did I think about it? I mean, come on. It's the best print that you've seen in cannabis in 7 years, maybe ever. Ever. I'm not impressed by it at all. It's just a single. That's all it is there. Execute.
Look at you being
execute. That's it. That's it. You know, I mean, it's a spectacular deal. And all I'm going to say is that were it not for the force of nature and credibility and leadership of Kyle Kazan, the execution and the team that Graham has built, the financial diligence and prudence that Mark Vendetti has put into that organization, and their collective will to go and do something which no one has ever thought you could do, and then do it, and then not brag about it, and then just modestly execute, boy, yeah. Well, it's. I will tell you that no one is going to replicate that transaction.
No
one.
I was impressed with the 3-year deferral on the interest payments, as well as the rate and everything. It was a great financing.
It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal.
So for those living under a rock the last 48 hours, Glasshouse secured a $50 million senior secured credit facility at 8.58% fixed rate, replacing a prior loan. And the new loan, also mentioned, has an 8.85% fixed rate and interest to loan period for 2 years, which obviously at the end will preserve $131.1 million in cash flow. And we all know key metrics during this earnings season. And if there is institutional interest at some point, they're going to look at cash flow when they look at the overall health of a company. But well done by them. And
and just to add to that, if you just add it up, right, and we can move on after this, but net, when you look at how much cash they got in the refi, and the cost savings on the interest and the amortization that they would have had to pay on the existing credit facility, that is a net 8 plus 12. It's a net $20 million addition to cash to the balance sheet for the year. And I will tell you that great job, GTI, on the bank syndicated deal that you did a couple of weeks or months ago. We beat you by 100 bips. Beat you by 100 bips.
It's got to be the beads. It's got to be the beads.
It's all about the team. All about the team and execution.
Well, another announcement was made last week, as we keep on the topic of debt and cash flow. The cannabis, they also extended the maturity of its secured notes to December of 2028, with options extended to 2029. When you look at both of these announcements, Glasshouse and the cannabis, I know some people look at the cannabis and say, well, they had to give away 25% of their company, but what's the alternative in this particular situation? But overall, they live to fight another day. They push this out. There's more runway time. Obviously, people are going to have to look at how they manage their time and how they execute over these next couple of years. But overall, like, how do you view these announcements? Is it a good thing for the industry, knowing that we are seeing an extension of runway with certain companies? Like, how do you, I guess, differentiate some companies versus other companies when it comes to these announcements?
So you have an impending debt maturity wall that we've talked about. Okay?
Yeah.
So either you can do one of two things. You can either be proactive and try and climb it, or you could be reactive and bury in your head in sand and hope it's not going to hit you. In the Glasshouse case, we've been out for years, trying to get a deal like that done. So it's not like overnight success 3 years later, right? When you look at what Curaleaf recently did and GTI recently did, I think those are decent transactions for them. When I look at the cannabis, I have a huge amount of respect for the C team at the cannabis, including Jesse Chanin, who I speak to and text regularly. I like what they're doing. I think that team, as a result of the deal, which did not happen for them, and the set of assets that they inherited out of like an amalgamated SPAC, it was a dog's breakfast. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to figure out the through line. The through line has been sell a bunch of stuff and refinance. And I think the fact that they got a refinance done in advance of a pending maturity wall and kicked it out 2 or 3 years kind of illustrates to me three things. It illustrates to me awareness, it illustrates to me competence of the team, and it illustrates a high level of kind of capital market skill, right? Okay. That was the one of the few on my radar screen where I was like, oh, this could go sideways. So kind of like out of the blue, for that to just show up on the radar screen, they're like, we kind of did the same deal that AYR did, and we got it done, and we're just going to be humble. We're going to go chop wood about it. Really love that deal for them. Like it for the industry. If you look at what these two transactions mean for the industry, it means that a couple people have gotten what they need to get gotten done, and it's going to get harder to get through the wormhole as you get deeper into the cycle.
Yeah. I think it also shows that none of these debt issuers want anything to do with these operating businesses. They're willing to refi. They're willing to take. I mean, they're getting paid generously. I mean, that cannabis deal, that's heavily dilutive.
And remember, for the sake of the market and your investors and the guys, the people, the men and women who watch your show, you talk a lot about public equity capital markets.
Yeah,
so remember,
private.
there's $2.5–3 billion of public debt that needs to be refinanced that we know about. There's another $2–3 billion of private capital there that needs to be refinanced that we're not talking about as well. So, the deeper you get into Q2 and Q3 and Q4 this year, you might see some real pain. I've talked on this platform before about AYR, and boy, I don't think that's going to be pretty.
I think you're right there.
I'm with you.
All right, so let's wrap this all together then. What should we be paying attention most when it comes to key metrics? Yes, we look at debt, cash flow as two key metrics during this earnings season, but even outside of that, when you factor in everything we just talked about with the cannabis, air, Verano, long-term trajectory, what should we be mindful of as far as quote unquote opportunity, whether it's positive or negative, that we should be mindful of moving deeper here in 2025 and beyond?
Look, I think it's buckled down, right? I mean, I don't think it's going to get much easier as we get into the cycle here. I'm not sure that a lot of that is necessarily going to. I'm not sure a lot of the constraints that we have here are necessarily going to change, right? You're a quarter of the way, 30% of the way through earnings season. So, we still have AYR, Jushi, TerraSend, Ascend, Village, the Cannabis, Sundial, Cresco, Glasshouse, Decibel. I think I am seeing kind of two things that I watch. There does seem to be 5 Canadian LPs that are all publicly traded that seem to be doing okay, and also seem to be relying a lot in their announcements on growth from international. So I do think as you see Germany and Australia, and you guys know I'm on the board of the largest company in Australia, come online, I think those are going to be more and more important as growth markets because they seem to be growth catalysts for those 5 folks.
What a market.
Right?
Do you know Finn Hansel over at Sanity Group?
I do know who he is, yes. I can't say that I know him well.
Interviewed him last Wednesday, but wow. Finish your thought. Sorry, my apologies. Cut you off.
So, I do think if you're a value investor, I read and I promote a lot of Federico Gomez's research from ATB. In his latest note, tier 1 MSOs are trading at an average of like 3.9 EV to EBITDA and have an average cash flow yield, which is kind of cash flow from operations before changes in working cap as a percentage of market cap of 15% on average. So, they've never been cheaper. Right. So if you ever. So if you're a value investor and you haven't been crushed in the sector, like re-entering at this point or dollar averaging down at this point, if you're going to have a 3 to 5 year long-term strategy, I don't think these assets are ever going to get cheaper. So I do think that there is some level of
maybe not cheaper, but the question has to be asked, what companies are going to be around? I think that's a valid question.
I mean, you right now in cannabis, you need to know how to read a balance sheet. You absolutely know how to read it. You need to be able to read a balance sheet, understand cash flow metrics, understand the leverage, the impacts it has on the public equity, understand what the capital stack looks like as far as seniority with the private equity components of the business, and make your decisions. I mean, this is no more throwing darts. It's no more a basket approach. It's a stock picker's game, and you need to fundamentally understand these businesses to make your bets.
Not providing investment advice, but if you look at one equity in the sector that you should probably just own, it's GTI.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you could probably pick from there. We all know that, I'm an investor in Glasshouse. I'm a consultant to Glasshouse. I'm an advisor in Glasshouse. I think there's a pure play there from an execution perspective. We could talk about how valued it is, how it's valued, but I think that's an equity that is traded, kind of between $5 and $10 in the last year, and I don't think it's going to get any cheaper. I do like, a basket of 3 or 4, and whether that's Trulieve or Curaleaf or Verano or pick one. I'm personally less.
You hear a lot of You hear a lot about the air wellness story, considering what it did when the HHS memo came out in 2023.
Correct.
But that's not that.
I know.
I don't think
I'm
that's
just
going to
saying,
happen again. You can't base your investment decisions on that. You need to understand what kind of real estate assets these companies own, how many of them are leasebacks versus actually owning their assets, what does the balance sheet look like, and how fundamentally sound are they, especially if they need to dig themselves out of these holes.
And you can get that. I mean, if we look at the people that are kind of constrained, AYR and Jushi are definitely constrained, right?
But the thing is, yes.
So, if you're going to look at an equity where you're worried about long-term viability, those are two. I don't talk a lot about Cresco. I think it's probably a good buy. Another company that we don't talk about a lot, but I really like, and I think the CEO could be one of the 3 smartest people I've ever spoke to, is Sundial.
SNDL.
I really like SNDL. I really think Zachary is a friggin' killer.
High Tide knows how to execute as well. But one thing we forgot to mention.
Love what Raj is doing. Absolutely love what Raj is doing.
Another one mentioned here, and I would never have said this a year and a half, 2 years ago, Aurora, based on their numbers that they report out of Germany. I don't know enough about the story as far as what's coming next for them, but telling sign to get that story turned around, because they had some strong numbers based on the European market. Before I forget, just Chad, thanks. No thoughts on Curaleaf. I forgot to mention that. We talked about Verano. We talked about Trulieve, GTI. I know there were some numbers there where they missed estimates as well, but Boris is, at the realms now, and at the helm, I should say. And, he's basically vocalized to us that, he wants to really get his hands wrapped around this and make some major changes, not major, but changes to the company. And I think they're in the middle of a transition period right now, but,
permission to speak freely.
Sure.
he didn't last quarter, so I'll give him another chance, but he didn't. So
well said.
Of those 3, Curaleaf, GTI, Trulieve, I probably buy GTI and Trulieve and just wait on Curaleaf. Look, Curaleaf is the biggest. Boris is a force of nature. What he's done for the industry, good, bad, or indifferent, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, right? So I don't talk to him. I've never met him. I've had no exposure to him personally. So I can't tell you that I know him. 95% of the other people are texting me. But I think that's a large company that has gone through a decent amount of change in the last year. The fact that he's there, I believe that he will probably right the ship. And I don't believe that things are too big to fail.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you want to look at 3 stocks that you're just going to put in, the yearbook and not look at for 4 or 5 years, GTI, Curaleaf, and Verano. GTI, Trulieve, and Verano. GTI, Curaleaf, and Trulieve are the 3 biggest, and the 3 that I think survive any storm.
This has been awesome. I appreciate the honesty, appreciate the directness, and appreciate the feedback. Let's keep
guys. So appreciative of the roster spot and the platform. Love what you are doing, and happy to be a resource for you. Catch as catch can. I am, I'm in the ether sometimes, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you whenever it manifests. So
all right, sir. We'll have back you on in a couple weeks to talk about the remainder of the earnings season. But this has been great. Let's keep in touch, okay?
I can't wait.
All right, thanks, Seth. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, gentlemen. Bye bye.
Right. Well, he was on fire today.
It's always a good conversation.
I think it's helpful, though, right?
Yeah. So it's great to get different perspectives, and he's usually got a pretty bang on perspective.
Emilio, I don't know if you're still watching, but you'd mentioned something about having stock tickers and their price at the bottom of I think our scroller on the show. That's definitely something that we can implement, but I always appreciate the constructive feedback. We'll look into that, and if you guys find it helpful to have ticker symbols with their share prices and where they close at the end of the day, that's definitely something that we can add. But we've reached out to Curaleaf team. Hopefully we can get Boris on. We're hoping to get him on tomorrow, but we'll keep you posted regardless. Friday, good show coming up. We got Jim Cacioppo from Jushi, who is reporting their earnings after market tomorrow, along with Anthony Cogniglio in New Lake and their latest earnings. That'll be going on Friday. So another action-packed show. and we'll talk numbers, and more numbers. So should be good as we wrap up our final live stream later this week on a Friday. But always good to have earnings season. We get a lot of great people on and lots to talk about, right?
And yeah, we've got Aaron Terrasent tomorrow.
Aaron Terrasent. Yes. And I know you're trying to set up a time with Jason and Zia to come on the live stream to talk about their numbers too, right?
Yeah, I'm working with that now. I think he's occupied tomorrow, but maybe get him on in the coming days.
All right, sir. Well, good to see you, and get some sleep. I'm sure you're getting
I'm getting plenty of sleep. So
juggling a lot of acts, I would say, this week. But how's everything in the household? Getting situated? I need to get
downstairs before my wife kills me. So,
all right. Hey, everybody, if you want a quick recap of the latest earnings and some of the stuff that Seth outlined and what our takeaways were from some of the latest numbers, make sure to scan that QR code and subscribe and become a baked-in newsletter. In the meantime, everybody, thanks for logging on here today, and we'll see you back here on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Stay connected here. The latest Traded Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our baked-in newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.